What is up, everyone? I'm Jeff London. This is the Mediocre Alaskan Podcast, where we are intolerant of weak-minded attitudes that keep people from pursuing new and exciting things in the areas of fitness, outdoors, and general lifestyle. Back from Washington, D.C. Got back last Sunday. It was a great trip. The wedding was beautiful. The rehearsal dinner was beautiful. Had a lot of good food. There was stuffed squid, and there was all kinds of great stuff there. And the reception dinner was unbelievable. So it's great to be back. It was also nice to visit the world once in a while. If for a good reason, for sure, but also to get a little bit of perspective. So DC is great for history. There's so much stuff there around. They're one of my favorite places to go now. I've only been there once, and this was the last trip, but every time I go to DC, it's probably going to be on the list, is the Museum, which is, I don't know where it is, but it's like 2 blocks off of the main Smithsonian Row, if that's what it's called. But being a journalism major and then getting my master's in journalism, I was kind of pulled to that. And so it's American history through newspapers and through journalism, so the people who are there to report it and to investigate it. And it's got the roots of history and the roots of the first printing presses and the first papers, and it's just fascinating to see how it's grown. And I got to the most recent kind of exhibits, or the most recent things that are talked about, and it's the fake news concept. And that's such a crazy, it's such a new thing to be calling it fake news, and whatever fake. So if you don't agree with it, or if it doesn't fit your ideas, then it's fake news, then that means you don't have to listen to it. And that's so dangerous and so scary, because people have been sensationalizing news since the 1800s. In order to sell papers, you had people who were just making outlandish stories and claims, and people have been dishonest since then. There's always cases of people who were plagiarizing stories and making up stories, fabricating stories. And those are just, recently the people that got caught, they fired, let go. But that's not a new thing. So a little perspective when people say it's the downfall of journalism, well, there's always been a human element involved, and the human element makes things certainly biased. I'm not totally sure if someone can really write totally objective, because if you're trying to separate yourself from the way your brain puts the world together in order to write this article that's totally objective, I don't know how you do it. You can do it as close as possible, but pure objectivity would be difficult, considering that humans are flawed. Even the most responsible and the most respected ethical journalist would you still got to read it with a little bit of, I don't want to say skepticism, but maybe it is skepticism. Maybe that's the right word. Just knowing that there's different angles, there's other people who might need to be interviewed. Even eyewitnesses are difficult to trust, because if you're looking back through distance, you remember their memory and remember the memory, and then you're remembering what you remember. And you're making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And I think about that in terms of like high school and college. And I wonder if I remember things exactly as they happened, or just that's how I now remember it. And that it's pretty different than the way it actually went down. So it's nice when I talk to buddies from college and we have the same memory, just to see what I'm missing, or if I tell it the same and they hear it the same and they know it the same. It's kind of nice to recollect on that. But anyway, fascinating stuff there. When I first showed up, I got in the elevator that takes you to the top. And you start up at the top, and then you kind of corkscrew down. And I was getting on the elevator with a lady and with us, or the staff member, who directed us to the elevator to ride up. And the staff member was saying he's going to have to leave. That's where I picked up the conversation, or just was overhearing it. So I got on the elevator, and the lady, I guess, acknowledging that I had heard part of the conversation, said, "Yeah, I'm going to meet a student. Yeah, he spit off the top rail." And so kid hocked a loogie off the top rail all the way down to the bottom. And so I didn't say much, but I'm thinking, no, what a chatterhead. I mean, there's kids being kids, and that kids are dumb. They make dumb decisions. Well, they are not dumb, but they make stupid decisions to show off to other people. But then this lady said that she was the dean of the school, and she was complaining. She said, "Well, what do they want me to do?" because we're all the way from Virginia, which isn't too far away. I don't know if they took the metro in or a bus or whatever. She said, well, he's not going to be leaving because I can't leave everyone else here and take this kid home. And so I said, yeah. Just gave a kind of a non-committal answer to anything. And then she said, I don't even think that that's worthy of being kicked out. And I just kind of nodded my head, thinking, you're at a museum on a school trip, and it's a Friday. So if you are on a school trip on a Friday, you're not in school. You get to be going into Washington, D.C. from wherever you are at in Virginia. Why would you do something that might prevent you from being able to go on future school trips? This isn't like it's a required history assignment on a Saturday, so you're ruining half your weekend because you have to go to this museum. You're out of school on a Friday. All you got to do is not hawk loogies, man. Just walk around and pretend to be interested. Just don't be a little fool. So I was really surprised. Well, not really surprised about the dude thing, because even with all that sort of logic, people make poor decisions when they're younger and they make them fast. But the vice principal saying that she didn't think that was anything worthy of getting kicked out. And I thought she's the vice principal, or maybe she said she was the dean. Either way, she's an administrator here, and she was not upset at all. She was almost coming to the defense of the kid, and she was. It seemed like she was dreading the situation that she was going to have to call the parent and explain to the parent that the kid spit, but was afraid of what the parent might say and was afraid of the parent. It seemed like it was a private school because all the kids had like their last name in their class. I don't know if that's part of the new school uniform in a lot of private schools down south, but the class and the last name were on the back of like jackets or coats or whatever they were wearing there. But it was interesting to see how the vice principal wasn't upset, or the dean was not upset. She wasn't just frustrated and upset. She just was looking at, she was going to have to sit with the kid for the rest of the day, and the kid was going to have all the power. And why is Johnny over there? Oh, he spit off the rail. And so the kid gets all the power, gets all the notoriety, he gets all the fame for this, and he's the little rebel, the little renegade, and probably won't learn anything from it. But I thought back to Southeast Alaska when we were on music trips or we were on whatever trip. If you did anything bad, you were getting sent home, and the expectation was that the parents were going to pay for it. The year after I graduated, some kids up at Music Fest, I'm almost positive, I think it was the year after I graduated high school, were caught doing something bad, and they got sent home, and the parents had to pay for it. That's just what the expectation is. And so if you were an idiot, you're getting sent home. There's no, okay, you got to finish the trip. There's consequences. And that was, we were kind of afraid of that. We didn't want to miss out on trips and stuff. So, yeah, just a different dynamic. Just interesting there. And I contemplated some sort of metaphor that, you're at the museum and you're talking about the history of America, and you're talking about journalism, and maybe if in its current state you have the youngest or the current generation spitting in the museum on journalism. I don't know. I didn't want to go too far with that because the kid obviously didn't know what he was doing. But it was an interesting little, you're not in Ketchikan anymore moment, or you're not in Southeast Alaska moment anymore. But so another thing that I liked about getting out there and touring DC was I used Uber for the first time as far as using it on my own app. I have been in Uber before as well as Lyft, but I didn't have the app, and I did not summon the driver myself, which was it was a neat experience. I feel that I've grown from that. I feel that it was cool to do. The hotel I stayed at was $280 a night, and that did not include any sort of meal. There's no continental breakfast, not even like toast and eggs or a yogurt or like a fruit basket. There was a $14 breakfast buffet, which I just crushed as much as I could because I was trying to get as much money out of it as possible. Man, everything's so expensive down there. So expensive. It's the way it is. I haven't stayed in a hotel in a while. There were a couple by the airport in Seattle that I've stayed in on my way other places, but that was crazy. Crazy. Then the pace of life You know, the way that people drive, just the fast, everything's fast. Everything is fast. And it made me appreciate the pace of life in Ketchikan.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plans shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
I love to get out and again have an attachment to the world and see what's going on out there. But getting back to Ketchikan, where we have a grocery store, we have everything that we need. We also have the opportunity to get outside so quickly and so easily. I think that's the biggest. If one side is deprived, I think the deprivation of real, authentic wilderness is a much more hurtful deprivation than being deprived of humanity, as far as civilization, as far as malls and movie theaters and entertainment and shopping and just variety of those sort of things. I think and this is probably what you would expect someone from Ketchikan, Alaska to say. But if you're in an urban setting, that urban setting could be anywhere. The only way that you're in D.C. in certain blocks is, you see the monuments or you see some of those circles that people have to drive. They're crazy to navigate. But downtown or urban settings might as well be anywhere. You change the style of the house a little bit and it doesn't really matter. So just, what is the true identity in it? And again, you look at people growing up, kids growing up or adults, some of them love it. I'm not saying there's anything bad with that, but I do wonder about the mental health and the overall happiness of some if you can't manufacture that because you're dependent upon what is provided for you. What sort of commerce is there? You go to your coffee shop and you hang out with your friends. That's great. It's not a visceral experience. If you live so close to the outdoors that you can do it after school or before school, after work, if it's all just right there, there's meaningful things that are right at the door. I was read Into the Wild with my outdoor lit class, and then we were reading the Outside magazine article it's called Death of an Innocent, which I won't go into again. I call it Into the Wild because that's the article that ended up making it as a full length book by John Krakauer. But if you have people in an urban setting that look at this kid who sells off or gives his money away and then hitchhikes around after he ditches his truck and then gets up to Alaska and lives off the land for a little bit before he dies in a bus. If you're someone who doesn't have any access to the outdoors, that sort of freedom has got to be just so desirable to be able to do that, to be able to not have to worry about the chains of society. And so if that's read by someone who lives in an urban setting, it's no surprise that my buddy Nate, who teaches that book in his junior AP class, a lot of the kids get really caught up in Chris McCandless' story, and they want to live like that, or they think that guy has something figured out. Whereas talking with my students in my adventure lit class, they had the same response as a lot of the writers up here that were writing for newspapers that said, well, this kid was a mooch, and you don't want to say anything. I mean, the kid died. You don't want to get too, or young adult died, so you don't want to just defame the dead, but he mooched rides from people, and he was dependent upon people who were engaged in the society that he said that he threw off. So if he's getting away from society and he's escaping it, well, he's not really escaping it, because he's getting rides from people who are part of it, who have jobs part of it, who haven't given all their money away, who still have a vehicle, who have a job, who are working for the man or in the machine in order to afford that, and he's dependent upon those people to give him rides. Then he gets to Alaska, and he has a .22, and he poaches animals to live until he ultimately dies. And he shot a moose. I don't know how he killed a moose with a .22, even if it was a small one. But then most of the meat rotted. So wasteful poach, that doesn't get read the same way. It kind of gets glossed over, because the principle of this kid throwing off society and going out and living, that resonates with people. People want to know if they have what it takes. Not everybody, of course. People are happy with city life and they can't imagine living anywhere else. And that's no problem at all. So in the same way that a weekend out in the woods at a nice cabin does the ticket for them and allows them to have their little view of the way the other world lives, that's what I do when I go to the city. But I'm sure there are people who are in that urban setting who would love to escape and love to be away from that and get away from the traffic, and in a more responsible, not as dependent on the help of others way, live in a place or be in a place where you can live in the wild and you can still be responsible and you can still have the longevity, rather than just go live out in the woods in a cabin or a bus and eventually succumb to something. So it's nice coming back to Ketchikan and realizing that it is a really nice place to live. And it rains a lot, and it's dark, and in the winter it's 37 degrees and raining is a different type of cold than -20, because -20 is just really, really cold, but it can be sunny and -20. So it's a dry cold, bitter dry cold, and your boogers and your snot freezes in your nose, and that's no good. But 37 and rainy, you get that wet rain, and so it just chills you to your bone marrow, and that's awful. It's miserable. But what do you hate worse? Some people would say they cannot do without the light, and that's the total thing, and I totally get that. But what do I hate more? Do I hate traffic and cookie cutter everything? Or do I like individual identity of this town and the art scene that's specific to Ketchikan and the mountains and the ability to get outside? Do I hate the weather more than traffic? No. I hated the traffic. I hated the nonsense so much more than some of the down parts of living here. Anywhere has a brochure, and the best parts of town you can claim, but that might not actually be the life that you live. And so if you live the brochure, no matter where you're at, yeah, you can convince yourself that you have a great existence, and that's fun. When I was in California, they said that, or everyone said that Manteca was great because it was centrally located. And you were 3 hours from the beach, or 2 hours from the beach, 2 hours from the mountains, a couple hours from the city. So if you want to go to a Warriors game, you go to a Warriors game. You want to go to a Kings game, go to a Kings game. Go to a Giants or an A's game, you can. Go to Santa Cruz, cool. You got Tahoe, great. So all that stuff is there. But how many people do it every weekend? If you end up doing one of those things a couple weekends, and this is not to criticize people who live there. People who live there and they love it. They grew up there and they live there and they crush it and they're happy. That's the main thing. But for someone who grew up in a place where we didn't have to drive very far at all. It wasn't 2 hours away. You're 2-minute bike ride from wilderness. That's what I was used to. And so if I'm someone who likes the outdoors and loves nature and loves to see deer that are just, and bear in the wilds and see the tide rise and fall, if you want that, that's right here. And I start to miss that after about 4 days outside of town. So when I left DC, it was right about time for me to get back to Alaska and get back to being in the woods, which is nice. So this last weekend I went hunting. My girlfriend was in town, so we went out to hunt a couple days. Weather was miserable, but it's nice to be out in the wild, and you're seeing all kinds of bear sign, you're seeing some deer sign, and you're not seeing any human sign. It's pretty cool. If you look in certain directions, you'll see clear cuts that are starting to grow in. But it's amazing to just be out in that, and even if it is raining, it's just that harshness to it, and it's not civilized by contemporary standards. There's no Wi-Fi. It's experience is great, and as much fun as it is to get away from what you're used to. And I think it's important to do that. I think it's important that I don't want to just stay in Ketchikan forever and never go visit stuff. I want to go check on the world and see what it is, and just to make sure that I, don't adopt this hunker down in Ketchikan for the rest of my life sort of thing. Life is about adventure and experience. You want to go out and you want to see some stuff for sure. But it does make you appreciate home. As long as you're living home to the degree that you should, going out and seeing what else is different reminds you of how much you love it. And people, I'm sure, come up here during the summers and they love the cruise. They love seeing in Ketchikan, and they love seeing Sitka and all these other places. But when they go home, they're happy to be home. They experienced something and they saw a different way of life, and they're not pulled to moving there or changing anything up, but they have a little bit of perspective. And I think that's definitely what it's about. Seeing what's out there and making a decision based on, kind of knowing all the facts rather than just assume things are the way they are, which kind of ties back into the museum, right? You're reading a newspaper, you're reading someone else's opinion. You're reading someone else's interpretation of the facts, someone else's interviews, different sources. Man, you got to go out there and see stuff yourself and see if it's really like that. I used to think that New Jersey was just nothing but concrete, but they have crazy black bear populations, big black bear, and you can't hunt them anymore, which is going to make them even bigger. And at some point, they're going to be getting into backyards if they're not already. But New Jersey, you would have thought, right? But so there's a lot of United States out there that I want to see and I want to visit. New England sounds awesome. Getting up out New Hampshire area and Maine, I think it'd be beautiful. And I haven't seen it. I don't know what that looks like. When I was driving with my brother from North Carolina to California, Asheville, because Ashland is in Oregon. Asheville, North Carolina, right? Asheville. Beautiful, unbelievable, and it's up in the Appalachian Mountains. And I'm used to Alaska mountains or Rocky Mountains, but Appalachians, you don't. I expected everything to be snow fed, because that's what everything is. And so you go back there, and there's no like monolithic faces here. There's no snow melt and year round ice. Where's all this water coming from? But it's those streams, or the underground streams and the springs. It's crazy, beautiful. Who would have thought that? That's the way things go. And you have these hidden waterfalls that are massive, coming out of a place that when you go up and over the Appalachians, there's never a crazy pass that's windy and it's just all rock and there's still snow left over. Beautiful. Beautiful. Who would have thought that some of the best fly fishing I've ever done was in Arkansas? Insane. But Cotter, Arkansas, going down the White River, getting a guide, it's beautiful. Unbelievable brown trout fishing. But it just underscores the importance and how much there is here in the United States. And a lot of times we just fly over it on our way to somewhere else, to another big city, which could almost be any big city, really, outside of a couple specific things, the touristy things that you would go to see in a San Francisco or a Seattle or an LA or a Denver or a DC or a New York or a Boston. there's just so much in between. Those flyover states have so much, and seeing the way people live there, and it's eye-opening and it's fun. Either to remind yourself of how much you appreciate where you live and that you don't live there, or remind yourself that there are things out there that might be super appealing. So we will call that episode 63. Make sure you go to themediocrealaskan.com, check out content there. Stuff I've been writing for the Juneau Empire. Every other week there will be a column in there. So if you're in the Juneau area, you get it online. Be on the lookout for that in the outdoors section. Also look at caffeineandkilos.com. Check out the blog and the informational articles section. I've been writing some stuff in there about lifestyle, mostly about coffee. If anybody has any questions leading up to this election season, there's an opportunity to stand for salmon and stand for Alaska, but some people say you do that by voting no on Prop 1. Some people say you do that by voting yes on Prop 1. So if anybody has any comments or insight they would like to share that I would then share on this podcast to help people be informed, please let me know. You can send me a message on Facebook or on Instagram at Alaska One or the Mediocre Alaskan. Share with that. We can discuss some of those things. If anybody else has some insight or a recommendation about someone to have on who has an expert opinion or has some insight, let me know. And that will do it. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.